Good evening, I'm Farhana Sheikh and you are tuning in to AWANI Tonight. The Tobacco and Smoking Control Bill tabled for first reading in Dewan Rakyat. And is Malaysia doing enough to eliminate human trafficking in the country? That's coming up. The Klang Valley, along with several other states, were hit by a blackout this afternoon, catching residents by surprise. Reports of power supply disruptions began at 12:39 p.m. but was fully restored shortly after 3 p.m. Areas from Cheras and Petaling Jaya to Bayan Lepas in Penang and Pancur in Johor were affected. Blackouts were also reported in Pahang, Kedah and Perak. The power outage also affected hospitals, public transport services and the main terminal of KLIA for over an hour. Tenaga Nasional Berhad said the power outage was caused by a fault at the Yongpeng North substation in Johor. This involved 2.2 gigawatts, which is responsible for 10% of the total national power supply. Under the Antiparty Hobbing bill, any MP who leaves a political party in one coalition to join another, whether in the same coalition or different one, will lose their seat. This was announced by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob when tabling the bill in Parliament today. However, he said there are exceptions to the rule, such as if the MP is dismissed from a party, elected as Dewan Rakyat Speaker, or if the MP's party is dissolved or deregistered. In his debate, opposition leader Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said the bill does not satisfy all demands made by the opposition, but they will still support it. He said the move to have the law is an important first step to stop corruption, which includes the act of buying over MPs for support. The Tobacco and Smoking Control Bill 2022, also known as Tobacco Generational Endgame, was tabled for first reading in Parliament today. If passed, Malaysia will not only ban smoking, but also prohibit the ownership of tobacco and vape products by anyone born in 2007 onwards. Those caught breaking the law can be fined up to 5,000 ringgit. The proposed bill, tabled by Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin, is divided into 12 parts with 55 clauses. Among others, it mandates licenses for production and distribution of tobacco products. Any advertisement of tobacco products, promotion and sponsorship of smoking products is also criminalized. Individual offenders can face up to a maximum 1-year jail sentence or a maximum fine of 20,000 ringgit or both, while repeat offenders face a maximum 2-year jail sentence or a maximum fine of 30,000 ringgit or both. Under the proposed bill, the Health Ministry will be given control on how tobacco products can be sold, its price and what is and is not allowed, while authorities will be given more power to investigate, enter premises or seize transport without a warrant. Building owners and occupiers at smoke-free zones are also required to display warning signs of smoking prohibitions. The bill is expected to be debated and passed during the current Dewan Rakyat meeting. The Memorandum of Understanding between the federal government and Pakatan Harapan will not be extended. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob reiterates that he would abide by his party UMNO's decision to not extend the MOU. He said UMNO has been informed that the government will not be extending the MOU, while the opposition also agreed there was no need for another written agreement. Ismail Sabri stressed what is important now is having an understanding on several issues, such as pushing for laws like the Antiparty Hobbing bill and political funding bill. Though the MOU does not have an expiry date, the government and PH had agreed not to hold GE15 before July 31st. Good news for PTPN borrowers. Those who graduated with first-class bachelor's degree will be exempted from repaying their study loan. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the government decided to bring back the reward to encourage students to perform in their studies.
In his launching speech at the PTPN Silver Jubilee celebration in Kuala Lumpur, the Prime Minister said the exemption goes to every student who meets the criteria, regardless of their economic status and background, and who graduated from 2019 onwards. To date, he said 3.67 million Malaysian citizens have been assisted to continue their studies, with total PTPN loans amounting to 66.87 billion ringgit, while over 2 million PTPN borrowers have repaid their loans totaling 17.8 billion ringgit as of June 2022. He advised borrowers to settle their loans so that loans to other borrowers will not be delayed.
Toronto Assemblyman Paul Yong was sentenced to 13 years jail and 2 strokes of the rotan for raping his former mate. Ipoh High Court Judge Dato Abdul Wahab Mohamad said he found the 52-year-old guilty of the crime after considering all the evidence submitted. However, the court allowed Yong's application for a stay of execution pending appeal.
In delivering his judgment, Abdul Wahab said the defence had failed to raise a reasonable doubt against the prosecution's case. He also noted that the court had found the victim credible, honest, and that her statements are convincing. Yong, a former state executive councillor, was charged with raping the woman at his house in Marudesa Park on July 9, 2019. He pleaded not guilty. Yong was allowed bail of 30,000 ringgit in one surety, and his passport was surrendered to the court.
Malaysia remains in the lowest tier of the US State Department's annual human trafficking report. Although the Home Minister stressed that the ranking is not reflective of Malaysia's fight against human trafficking, Be My Protector co-founder Kelvin Lim says there's a lot more happening on the ground.
We see the perpetrators being let go and the victims being penalized. So when you say the laborers being forced, and when we've seen a lot of laborers that we have, especially more the domestic helpers, trying to help them. And when we help them, instead of them being helped by the, for lack of government officers or officials, they are the ones being victimized in that sense. So when that happens, most of the domestic helpers that we are trying to help, all they want to do is just go back to their country. They don't want to take any action against their perpetrator because they are, in a sense, being forced to feel that they are, for lack of a word, an alien in this country, and they are not, their rights are not being protected.
Kelvin said the issue also has wider consequences.
Eventually, all these countries will stop bringing in their people to work in Malaysia. So it is definitely going to affect Malaysia both ways. From labor perspective, we're already seeing that. And as you can see, the newspaper in the Star just talked about, they call it black market of domestic helpers, where people are already now getting domestic workers from the black market. So we can see there's a shortage of domestic workers, and we are affected in terms of our economy, because then parents, families got to stop working, in a sense, cannot go to work because they will take care of their family, because they cannot get domestic helpers. And this is going to be, I would say, getting bigger and bigger, the issues.
Therefore, he advocates for more awareness to be instilled among Malaysians in order to put an end to human trafficking.
The Malaysian citizens, the corporate companies, the SMEs, we need to begin to rise up. And to rise up, it takes, I call it awareness, because I have met a lot of SMEs. They are not aware about this issue or don't care about the issue. So how do we, what I call it, how do we create progressive and effective awareness that will actually penetrate into the hearts of the citizens, the corporate companies, the SMEs, to realize that at the end of the day, they will be affected. And I feel that that is, to me, the greatest measure we need to address, because, like I said, transparency, accountability has been said, collaborating with NGOs has been said many years. But when it comes to awareness, or I call it progressive and effective awareness, we have not done enough in that area.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Maggi cukup rasa dengan bawang segar dan rempah ratus lazatkan lagi masakan kita. Supaya lebih yakin mencuba resepi baru, malah ada yang mula berniaga. Berani cuba, rasa hasilnya.
ASEAN must do more to end the crisis in Myanmar. CEO of Policy and Economic Affairs Centre of Malaysia Foundation, or PEACE, Dr. Zokri Idris, says this includes not isolating the latter in tables of discussions.
There must be more narratives and there must be more responses from the remaining 7 ASEAN countries as how Myanmar's behavior that should be stopped at once. And I think this is also a need for us to go back into the five consensus point that has been agreed last year in April, so that we keep bringing Myanmar back onto the table of discussion. I think the huge achievement ASEAN had achieved last year is to have the agreement of Myanmar to have this 5-point consensus. Of course, it has been halted over a year, and there is nothing wrong to revamp back the 5-point consensus, because this is what we all have agreed upon. So I think there must be no isolation. At the same time, we must bring Myanmar back onto the table of discussion, and we start where we left before, which is the 5-point consensus that has been agreed since 2021 in April.
Zokri added that Myanmar must be invited to participate in the 55th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting from 31st July to 6 August. He said this would allow the junta government to explain its recent behaviours, including the execution of 4 activists in the country ahead of the meeting.
Indonesia is playing this approach really well in mitigating both Ukraine and Russia, without leaving any of these parties behind. And I think ASEAN should follow that kind of footstep in working with I don't know, this is not a legit government and the junta, because it's been undermining by the right political party. But I think we must not isolate any actors in the region, and we must work with all of them together to achieve greater peace. Isolationism or blocking these people is not a good policy.
Over in the international front, at least 4 people were killed after a powerful earthquake struck northern Philippines earlier today. The 7.1 magnitude quake is centered in Luzon, the country's most populous island. At least 60 others were injured. The earthquake struck about 11 kilometers southeast of Dolores town at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers. The impact was felt in the capital city, Manila, about 400 kilometers away. Citizens have been warned to brace for aftershocks, but no tsunami warnings were issued as it was detected inland. Earthquakes are frequent in the Philippines due to its location on the Ring of Fire, where most of the world's earthquakes occur. Former Sri Lanka President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is expected to return to the country from Singapore. The cabinet spokesperson says he is not in hiding, despite the date of his return remains unknown.
The former leader fled Sri Lanka after mass unrest over an economic crisis. He left the country for the Maldives on July 13th before making his way to Singapore on the 14th. He submitted his resignation shortly after his arrival, with Ranil Wickremesinghe sworn in as his replacement last week. Rajapaksa was initially granted a 14-day visa for his stay in Singapore, but local media reports say this has now been extended for another 14 days.
That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.